Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Hey, and welcome back to One Stories. I'm Wendy Babcock, and today I'm with Lisa Condon. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Wendy.
I'm so excited to have you here. We've known each other for a while, so I'm very excited to have you come on and share more about who you are and what you do. So with that, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm excited too, Wendy. From the very beginning, you were building something so special, and I just wanted to be along for the ride of it and really dig into myself. So I'm Lisa Condon, as you mentioned. I run Lisa Condon Enterprises, and what I do is I'm a business consultant, I'm a life strategist and coach, and I'm a gratitude practitioner. That's what I do. And so I work with clients. I've been doing this actually this month. It's 17 years that I've been in business doing what I do, right? I know it's
Okay.
amazing. Yeah. And I just help them build from a place of value systems and gratitude, their business and their strategies in life and the work that they do.
What I love about you is you practice what you preach. So if you're not already following Lisa on social media, go out and do that because every day I see Lisa post without fail 3 things she's grateful for. So you want to talk about like how did that start?
It started a long time ago, once upon a time. So actually what happened was this woman whom I'm friends with, she had started posting this, and this is now close to 16 years ago, 15, maybe
Wow.
15. And I saw her post it and I went, Terry, can I steal that? Can I do that? And I did
Yeah.
it. And it was very topical at first. And then I would start noticing days that I didn't do it just because of how I felt. And then I
Yeah.
realized, wait a second, this is actually about me and how it's changing my lens and my perception of the world, the work that I'm doing. And I just felt this internal transformation happening. And it's it really is about putting what I want out into the world. And what I also found was when I would meet up with people, it wasn't topical conversation any longer, ever from the very beginning. It wasn't what I call weather friends, like, how's the weather in your area? It was more of, I saw your 3 gratefuls and I love that. It made me think of this about myself. And when you start having that impact without realizing it, it becomes incredibly important. And I think it changed the accomplishments that I wanted to bring into the world and my purpose into the world, which is really about, again, having that strong foundation of gratitude. And so I've been doing it ever since, and I, without fail. And now I have a gratitude group that on Facebook that people can belong to. It's free, and we dig deeper into the gratitude and for themselves.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Facebook group. So if someone's listening, how can they join that? Like we'll put the links in the comments, but is it a paid thing? Is it free?
It's totally free and it's 90 days of gratitude. And so what we do is I take people through my 9 steps of gratitude, but through a 90-day process. And it's just daily prompts of thought. You don't even have to do anything. Some people post back, some people don't. But we have about 300 and some odd members in there. And we just started our 90 days yesterday. So yeah, today is day 2. So again, it's really about, I want to say, inner reflection and things that you can do and practical things that you can do, whether it's from me or whether it's from others that are in the group, and just coming together in this collective gratitude space to then take it as part of your day. And that's all it's about. And so it's 90 days of gratitude. You do have to send a request and I approve it. But I approve them right away and you can get in.
That's awesome. And gratitude is actually pretty contagious. I'll tell you, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but even if I'm just kind of scrolling on Facebook, so here's, I scroll with my right hand, right? So I'm holding it, I'm scrolling, so it's hard to reach over sometimes to like. So sometimes I don't interact, but whenever I see your posts or your I always stop and I think about 3 things that I'm grateful for, like without fail.
I love
So
that.
it's contagious. So even if you're not seeing someone interact, because sometimes I'm just scrolling, I'm like, they need to move the like button over for me because I don't have long enough thumbs and they can't see me stretching my thumb out right now. So I'm talking about this. So I think one of the benefits too, maybe it's a big benefit of joining your group is it's contagious. Sometimes like, I don't know what I'm grateful for. And then someone else posts something like, I'm grateful I had a cup of coffee this morning. It doesn't have to be huge.
Mhm. And I think that's exactly it. I've been doing this for so long that I know it doesn't have to be more than 2 minutes of your day to
Yeah.
change that mindset and that space. Um, but I think that when you're first starting off, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to,
Yeah.
I've got to get it right. I've got to say the right things. I've got to do the right things. And no, you don't, because whatever it is right. So don't over engineer it for yourself. But when you see other people just stepping in and being vulnerable and saying, you know what, I'm going to try this, or I really love that I get to go to the beach every morning and watch a sunrise. That is so meaningful to that person that it's contagious because you feel their gratitude, you feel their passion, you feel whatever it's ignited in them starts igniting something in yours. And, that's part of the gratitude effect. It really is those pebbles and that just continue. And you never, ever know who's watching, who's paying
Hmm.
attention, even when they're silent. And, like you, I never knew that you stopped. And I think that's wonderful. And so there's impact there, but also how you take that space into your world of that heartfelt space and that space of gratitude. Who are you impacting that needed that moment in that day? And
Yeah.
so it truly is, it is, it's magic. It's
Hmm.
magic. I don't know any other word for it.
It truly is. So tell me, who do you mainly work with? Like, who is your ideal client? Who's the person listening that you're going to say, and they're going to be like, oh, that's me.
hmm I tend to work with either solopreneurs or small business owners who are really wanting to step into their purposeful work. So they could either be in transformation or transition in businesses, or they know that something's missing and they can't quite figure out what it is. That's who I work with. And it tends to be usually women. I do work with men, but it usually ends up being women and that are, I would say, usually in their late 30s to mid 50s. That's
Mhm.
just who I'm starting to work with more and more. And it's the other piece, Wendy, that I would say is those that are also inviting in the spiritual realm into their world, whatever that means to folks, that is also quite meaningful and also really aligns with the gratitude practice as well as the values practice. It's just a big piece of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I love that yours very specific on, and sometimes we just happen to notice who shows up in our circle. And that sometimes is a specific age range. I'm very similar with you. I'm very much a Gen X person. Like that's who comes to me.
hmm
Right. And so not to say that I wouldn't work with somebody, you know, above or below that age bracket, but that's just who's attracted to what I do. So,
Agree.
um, so let's talk a little bit about sharing your one story because, these things can be challenging. We talk about different topics, and I know, like, and I want you to talk through a little bit of your process because it shifted. So, do you want to just jump in and tell a little bit about the process with yours?
What do you mean? I wasn't different.
Yeah.
Yes, of course I can. Um, and I'll start off by saying this. I speak on a lot of stages,
Yep.
and I also was an actor for a long time. And when I'm on stage talking about business or I'm on stage portraying a different character, that's easy. Not easy,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
easy. When you are on stage telling your story and you get real raw and real vulnerable, it is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And also, I think ultimately it's probably going to be one of the most meaningful things I've ever done in my life. So I had to really dig deep to figure out when I wanted to work with because we all have a lot of them.
Right.
We all have a lot of them. And I started off with one and then I switched it completely to a different one. And then I moved it to what I ultimately ended up starting with. And I think there were probably 20 others in there. And funny enough, my best friend, who has known me for 37 years, said to me, I'm curious why you didn't start your when story with X, which was one of the other ones I thought about using. And I had the conversation with her. And what was wonderful is I knew I had made the right decision because of how I responded to her question.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. And some of the people have gone through this have had the same thing. Like, what's
Hmm.
the when?
Hmm.
Which one do I start with? Because we have complex lives, right? There's a lot of when moments. And so it was awesome for me for when you took the stage because I didn't know what your story was. But we build like because I've known you, of course, but even other people who I hadn't known very long who did the same thing, there's a trust that's built into the coaching and everything else that happens so that when you come up to me, you're like, all right, doing something you haven't heard yet. And I'm just like, okay, go do it.
And you know what, Wendy? If it were anybody else, I wouldn't have done that.
Oh, interesting.
That to me, trust is a big thing for me,
Me too.
a really big thing for me. And to be able to know that whatever choice I made, you would be a cheerleader for it in the right ways that I needed was huge. And it made it a very safe space for me to explore all of these options and go through my journey. If it weren't you, I don't think I could have done it. I think it would have been a completely different experience for me. Completely.
Wow. Wow. I don't want to get choked up when you're saying that, so I'm not going to. I'm gonna breathe it out. Okay. Wow, that means a lot to me. Seriously, trust is big for me too. And I'm asking people to be very vulnerable.
Mhm.
And so the stories you told, I remember sitting in the audience, like wiping the tears away as you're talking through a lot of it, and you even say you're not an emotional person,
Nope.
So how did it feel for you to tell this very vulnerable story? You know, uh, did you end up becoming a little emotional through it, or what was that like?
Yes. Yes, I did. And there's a couple of things. I mean, at one point, I literally felt like the little girl. I mean, I was literally right back in that space
Wow.
when I saw my dad. I mean, I was that age. Everything just came flooding back, and I got very emotional. And even there's some things for myself I had to compartmentalize because I still haven't worked through them in my own life. Like 9/11
Hmm.
is and continues to be a very big deal. And there's a lot more to that story, but the story wasn't about 9/11 for me, right? It was about
Right.
things much bigger than that in my life. Um, but I think what also has happened is since something changed for me in the when story, like something just shifted, similar to the gratitude and how that shifted in me. Something with the when story shifted, and I'm still figuring out what that is, but the vulnerability and the emotional connection that has now gone even deeper with whether it's friends, clients, my husband, there's something deeper and more meaningful there. And I don't know what that's going to do and how that's going to integrate, but it's important that I know it's important. So, and yeah, I find myself getting emotional now over like things that I didn't normally get emotional about, Wendy. So I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know whether to
Yeah.
thank you or not, but
Right.
it's like ripped off whatever emotional band-aid I had put on myself and deepened that connection with head, heart, and spirit for me. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So there's a lot that I'm still processing through all of it for sure.
Wow. And maybe it just needed to come to the surface finally. I mean, who knows what it is,
Yeah.
that unlocks something. But so your story is going to play after this. So if whoever's listening to this right after my interview with Lisa, her one story is going to play so you can hear more what she's talking about, like with the 9/11, because everything leads into what you do, the gratitude effect.
Yeah.
And I love that because I've always said what we've been through leads to what we do.
Yeah.
And you're a prime example of that. And I'm sure no matter which story you would have gone through, I think they all would have landed you right where you're at. And because they have.
I agree. I think they would have too. And as you look backwards and put your puzzle pieces together and figure out your story, it's very convoluted, right? And so I'm like, a 20,000 piece puzzle that I'm putting together, yet I believe we're all exactly where we're supposed to be in the moment. And believing that and knowing that, it means that every choice that I have made along the way has been the right choice in that time with the information that I had. Would I do things differently? No, I wouldn't, because I'm right here where I am. Doesn't mean it wasn't hard. Doesn't mean there weren't challenges. It doesn't mean that sucky things didn't happen. It doesn't mean that beautiful things didn't happen. But all of them are just a part of my story of who I am today. And I get to now make choices going forward based on all of that. So it's to be able, though, to go back and look at that and really take the time with it is healing, very healing.
So how can people get a hold of you? So they're listening to your story, they're hearing about what you do. What's the best place? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I love talking to anybody about their journeys and their purposeful work. That's just part of who I am. So my website is lisacondon.com, and my email is lisa@lisacondon.com, and I'm on all the socials out there. But by all means, shoot me an email, set up some time with me, and even if it's just a 15-minute connect, just so I can hear your heart and what's sparking you right now. I want to know all of that, and what are you grateful for? Like, let's have that conversation and make sure that you're living in that alignment, because when you do, it changes everything.
It really does. So off the cuff, since we're talking about gratitude, what's one thing you're grateful for today, Lisa?
Oh goodness. So today is my dog's birthday, and so
Yes.
I'm super excited about my Dexter. We both have a Dexter,
Yep.
who is literally laying on my feet right now. But
Mm.
but I think beyond that, I am so grateful that my heart opened to allow me to step into this vulnerable space in such a meaningful way. I'm really grateful for that.
I'm grateful for you, Lisa. Like, I'm just so glad our paths crossed and that not just that they crossed, that we've stayed connected, through all these years and stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you for, stepping into your one story and being on the podcast today. So in the show notes is all Lisa's contact information. Next up is Lisa's one story.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
When everything changed, I was sitting in my mother's car, holding my basketball uniform, stunned. And it's not because I'm 5 foot tall and was playing basketball. It's because of what had just transpired. So here I was about to go play and do a championship game. And I was in junior high and we were playing at the big high school arena, and it was so exciting. My junior high was about 2 miles away. So I'd gotten on the bus with my team. I came over to the high school. I got off the bus and forgot my uniform. I was back at the junior high. Now, my mom, she works second shift. So you can imagine how horrible I felt when I had to walk to the payphone. And yes, those existed back then. And I had to put money in it and call my mom and say, I forgot my uniform. Can you drive me to the junior high to grab it? So she did. Of course she did. It was my mom. She showed up. She took me to the junior high. I went to my locker and might not have been a washed uniform. That's okay. I grabbed it, got in the car. She drove me the other 20 minutes or so back to the high school. And that's when she said to me, I have something to tell you. And I'm waiting for it. Good luck. Congratulations. I love you. But instead, what I heard was, I'm leaving your dad and he doesn't know. And on Friday, which was just a couple of days away, you're going to need to come home from school, grab your things that you love the most, and we're leaving and we're moving to my best friend's house. And I sat there, stunned. And I took a breath and I said, well, what if I don't want to go? And she said, well, then I will stay and I will be miserable. I couldn't tell you what happened with that game that day. I couldn't tell you what I said. Don't know whether we won or lost, but I can tell you what happened that Friday. I came home from school after keeping that secret for a few days, not talking about it to my friends, not talking about it to my dad, who was my most favorite person in the world. And I packed my things, even in the suitcase that I would pack when I was mad at my parents and tried to run away when I was 5 and 6 years old. I packed that up. and I walked outside to put it in the truck of my mom's best friend. And as I'm standing there, I see my dad's car driving down the road toward us. Now, see, he was supposed to be on a business trip. And I learned later that there was something inside of him that felt that he shouldn't go. And he came home to myself and my mom moving out of the house. Needless to say, he walked right by us, walked into the house. And next thing I know, I'm literally driving away with my mom and her best friend. Now, we only moved 2 streets away, but those 2 streets seemed like the Sahara Desert to me. We get there, I unpacked my things into this new room of now that I had to share with my mom's best friend's daughter in the basement. All of a sudden, I was living with 2 new boys that I didn't really know. And I walked back up to my childhood home, those 2 streets. And when I got there, the garage door was still open. And I walked in. And then I stood at the door that led from the garage into the house, and I didn't know what to do. Was this still my childhood home? I had just left. I was 12 years old. So I knocked on the door and I went inside, and there was a hallway leading down. And I remember my father standing there over the sink where there's a window, and him just slouching over. And I just said in a very small voice, "Daddy." And he turned around and he looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I just cried and I said, "I'm sorry." And he told me to leave. And so I left. This daddy's girl heart was completely broken. And it was in that moment that I started not feeling. Now, I had already known about suppressing feelings because several years prior to that, I remember staunchly walking up the stairs from my basement telling my mother that I was being molested. And my mom looked at me and said, "I don't believe you." So I had already stuffed those feelings down pretty badly, but my dad never had made me feel that way. And so I started living in my head. My feelings, they were too scary. They were too hard. And so I stepped into the space of being this amazing, successful person that I wanted to be. I got straight A's in school. I was involved in everything until I started getting to like junior year and senior year because it became really exhausting. And by the time I was leaving for college, I became this crusader of truth, questioning everything and everybody. It was exhausting for them and for me. And that started showing up as anxiety, many panic attacks. But I went to college and I was still checking off those boxes of success, right? I was doing all the things. I had a lot of friends, but I was lonely. I had lost connection. That little girl, that strawberry blonde that was daddy's little girl that would run around, she was long gone by this point. And so by the time I graduated college and left college, I got this awesome job in the newspaper industry. And I was on that upward trajectory again, checking off those Lancaster County boxes of success. Get the job, get the career, make it up the ladder, right? I was doing all those things. And I was doing so well in the newspaper industry, and I had lived in 5 different states at this point, just getting job after job and promotion after promotion, that I was headhunted by the Newark Star-Ledger. Okay, now for those of you that don't live in New Jersey, I worked at other papers in New Jersey for Gannett, but the Newark Star-Ledger, now that was the creme de la creme. It was privately owned by brothers. It was a big deal. And so I accepted the job. I took this job late August 2001. And I moved into my new office with big windows overlooking New York City. Man, did I feel powerful. Well, that was late August. September 11th, 2001, I was standing in my office and started hearing a lot of just rumbling going on. I worked for a newspaper, for goodness sake, a lot of people talking. And next thing you know, there's a lot of commotion, and I turn and I look out the window and I see a plane flying into the second building. Stunned again. Now, I had been stunned in my life before, but there was nothing like this. And standing there and trying to figure out what to do, I get a phone call. And the first phone call that I received on my cell phone was from the person that actually had hurt me most in my life, my perpetrator from when I was a kid. First person I hear from. Are you okay? On the other end of the line. And I was in that moment. And then the towers fell. My heart, my everything that I knew to be true, my mental health fell with it. And after a couple of days, I called my mom and said, okay, I have now seen the worst of the worst, and I just need to come home. Now, before I had moved to New Jersey, I was living in Vermont. And now I had to move back to Lancaster County, the place that I had run from when I was 17. And it was a place I was going to just find myself again. So my mom came to the rescue again, got in her U-Haul, came and got me, grabbed my stuff, and I went home. The sadness that had taken over me and what I had felt in those moments, there's nothing that can explain it. And as I've told you, I'm not real great at feelings. So even describing what those were at the time was incredibly difficult. But what I do know is the anxiety and the panic that I was going through was enough that I begged my mom to hide any guns that were in the house because I was so afraid that I was going to take my own life because of what I was feeling, because it was too overwhelming. I don't know whether she did or not. Thank goodness I didn't go looking. But after 2 weeks of pulling myself together, taking a job from a temp agency because I needed to work so I could shove down those feelings again, I remember walking 2 streets up to my childhood home and sitting on the porch with my dad and having a conversation in which I cried uncontrollably. And my dad started to share with me some of his own stuff. The fact that he had panic attacks, the fact that he lived with anxiety. It was the first time I saw my dad as a man and not as my daddy. Now, I ended up going back to Vermont, drove up there, kind of restarted my life because I thought, okay, there was just a blip. I was meant to be in Vermont, so I moved back. And 6 years later, I got a phone call. Hey, Lisa, I'm in the hospital and my blood pressure's up. They're just checking it, my mom told me. Okay, let me know what happens. The next morning, I'm at my job at the credit union, and I try to call my mom in her hospital room, and she doesn't answer, so go into my meeting not thinking anything of it. And the next thing you know, I try her again, and I call her, and she answers, and she doesn't sound right, and she said, well, they were checking me for my heart rate, and now they're talking to me about cancer. I don't know what to do. I said, I'll be there as soon as I can. And so I figured out how to get on a plane that same day, flew down there. My best friend picked me up, made a wrong turn, ended up in Delaware. But we ended up getting to Lancaster. And I went to my mom, and sure enough, she had lung cancer. And so I stayed. I stayed with her for several weeks till I got her out of the hospital because they had to give her chemo. It was small cell lung cancer, so they needed to give her chemo, but they needed to watch her heart because her heart rate was up. All kinds of things were going on. And I waited until we got her home and I got her settled and, went to Costco and bought her these stupid sherbet things that she loved. I don't know, but it was what she loved. And there's a picture that I post every single year. And it's the last picture that was ever taken of my mom and I, because it was the day that I left and we sat on the stoop in front of the house that we had moved into many years before. And then I went to the airport and flew back to Vermont. And it was only a couple days later that I got the call that she had passed away. From the time that her symptoms until the time she died, it was 5 weeks. But let me tell you how grateful I am for the time that I chose to spend, because I got to have deep and meaningful conversations with my mom. Now, see, my mom and I had a good relationship. Even after everything that happened as a kid, I still liked my mom. I still enjoyed my mom, but it wasn't a deep relationship. But in those few weeks, I was able to talk to her about the fact that she had no confidence, no self-esteem, the things that had happened from her mother, her imposter syndrome, how she felt second to her sister always. I got to know that, and I got the gift of seeing my mom, not as my mom, but as a woman. And then a few years later, I did move to Delaware, not because of a wrong turn, but my husband and I decided that we were going to move to Delaware, be near my dad before anything ever happens to him. We get there. A week later, I get a phone call from my dad and said, I'm not feeling great. I'm going to go see a doctor. Well, alarm bells went off for me, friends, because let me tell you, my dad had not been to a doctor in probably 40 years. And sure enough, just as I thought, he had cancer. He had mesothelioma from working with asbestos for many, many years in Armstrong. And I went back to Lancaster again, to my childhood home. I stayed in that home. I took care of my dad before we ended up putting him in hospice. And when he went into hospice, ultimately he passed away. And again, from the time that I got that phone call from my dad and he had that symptom until the time he passed away, it was 5 weeks. But again, I got to have those conversations that were deep and meaningful, even deeper than the ones that we had around 9/11. And I saw him as my daddy again. The first time ever in my life that I actually knew that he was proud of me were in those last moments of his life. But I also saw him as a man because of what I had experienced from our conversation before. Now, what's important for me is that a few years before my dad's passing, I had started practicing gratitude. I had seen a friend of mine post on Facebook 3 things I'm grateful for, and I emailed Terry and said, "Hey, I really like that. Can I steal that?" She said, "Absolutely." So I started doing it. 3 things I'm grateful for. Pretty topical stuff. I didn't do it every day. And then time progressed and I started doing it more and more. And as the years went by, my gratitude started getting deeper. I found myself feeling again. I found this alignment between my heart and my head because my heart did not want to be silent any longer. It wanted to come out and play. It wanted to feel. It wanted to express more than like, love, angry, hate, because that's all I knew. It wanted to explore and be curious of all the feelings that were out there. And I began to heal. And it's through that journey of gratitude that I came to understand that each of us are doing the best that we can with our luggage of life. And through this practice of gratitude, I will continue to feed my mind, to nourish my heart, and to really express my soul, because it's through the vulnerability of sharing our stories that actually connects us all. I think back to some of the things that I went through, and if I had shared my story, would I have felt the loneliness that I felt when being in a room of 50 friends? If I had shared my story, would I have had deep and more meaningful conversations with my parents earlier? Perhaps. But what I do know is that where there was once fear, there's now compassion. And my gratitude has turned to grace. And my heart is filled with the purest of love. And my gift to the world is the gratitude effect. And my promise to that little girl is to live out loud. And that, my friends, is my wish for all of you. Thank you.
Your story